I used to think languages were just tools, things to get you by, connect some conversations, express needs, give commands, say hello and goodbye, or tell someone you love them. That was before I discovered the phrase that changed everything. 3 words I couldn't stop hearing from Filipinos, online and in person, despite not fully understanding it at first. Kaya mo yan. I live in a gray apartment block on the outskirts of Kyiv. Life here is often quiet, structured, a little cold, and strangely predictable. People don't usually smile at strangers unless they've had coffee. Encouragement is reserved for close family or deep friendships. Showing too much emotion when things are hard is often seen as weakness. So when I first heard Kaya mo yan online from a Filipino friend during a video call, I thought it was just a positive expression, like good luck or you'll be fine. But it wasn't just a phrase. It was more like a living heartbeat behind the Filipino spirit. I met this Filipino friend through a language exchange app in the most random way. I was trying to improve my English, and he wanted to practice basic Ukrainian phrases. I didn't know then that this person, and his culture, would introduce me to an idea that would eventually pull me out of some dark places inside me. During our first few conversations, I noticed how often he used the phrase kaya mo yan. If I told him I was struggling with a work project, he'd say it. When I told him my country was in a tense political situation, he sent it again. When I shared I wasn't sure what to do with my life, and that sometimes I felt lost, I saw the message pop up on my screen. Kaya mo yan. I said thank you, but I didn't understand. Was it a literal phrase? A joke? A meme? Why do Filipinos say it all the time? Is that a motivational quote? I asked once. He laughed and explained. It means you can do it, like genuinely. It means we believe in you, no matter how hard things are. That's when I learned something about the Philippines. A country constantly hit by typhoons, earthquakes, poverty, difficulties, and yet full of people who still believe in smiling and lifting others up. Not in the way Western motivational speakers do, not in the cold corporate way, but in a real human way. A way that says, life is hard, but we face it together. That was already beautiful to me. But it wasn't until months later that I began to understand why this phrase means so much more than encouragement, why it's not just something said casually, but something deeply tied to the Filipino soul. It happened when my life began falling apart. My job was unstable. The economy was uncertain. My relationship with my parents was tense. Friends I once trusted were drifting away. The world outside was changing faster than my mind could catch up. Every day felt heavier. I started losing sleep, losing direction, losing joy. One night, I opened up to that same Filipino friend in a voice message. I didn't expect a reply. I just needed someone to hear me, someone who wouldn't ask me to explain everything or fix every broken part of me. 3 minutes later, I got a voice note back. Calm, soft, not rushed. Just a simple human voice saying, I don't know the pain you're going through, but I want you to know something. Kaya mo yan. You're stronger than you think. You don't have to see the final answer yet. Just breathe. One step, one day. Kaya mo yan. I played it again. And again. And again. Not because he said anything profound or poetic, but because he didn't try to solve me. He just believed in me. That's when I started searching online. I wanted to know more about why Filipinos say this so much, why it's so embedded in their culture, why it sounded so simple but felt so powerful. I learned that the Philippines is a country that has survived everything. Colonizers, natural disasters, political betrayal, economic breakdowns, world wars, personal tragedies that never even make the news. And yet they still dance, laugh, sing karaoke at midnight, and say kaya mo yan to a stranger like it's the most natural thing in the world. I found stories of Filipinos helping each other rebuild their homes after typhoons without waiting for government support. I watched videos of overseas workers crying while working abroad but whispering kaya ko to, I can do this, to themselves before returning to work. I saw nurses, seafarers, teachers, caregivers, mothers, fathers, all saying those words to stay alive inside. That was the moment I realized. Filipinos don't just say, you can do it. They live it for each other. The phrase existed outside motivation. It was survival. It was love. It was faith. So I started trying it. The next time a coworker complained about a task, Instead of awkward nodding, I said, in English first, "You can do it." Then I tried saying it in Tagalog. "Kaya mo yan." She laughed. "What does that mean?" The next time my younger cousin was having anxiety about an exam, I said, "Kaya mo yan." She smiled, even though she didn't understand. I translated it. She kept smiling. Slowly, I noticed it helped me too. Not only in saying it to others, but in saying it to myself. When I got up in the morning, even though I felt heavy, I whispered it. When I was brewing coffee alone before the sun rose, I whispered it again. When I was scared about my future, and even ashamed of my failures, "Kaya mo yan." The strange thing is, it didn't magically fix my problems, but it helped me walk through them instead of collapsing under them. It reminded me that no one has to be okay all the time, that life is not about perfection or success, but resilience and hope. And hope, I realized, has an accent, a Filipino one. That's when I decided I want to visit the Philippines. Not as a tourist, but as a student of humanity. I wanted to meet the people behind the phrase, the laughter behind the hardship, the people who took the worst storms and still had the courage to smile, cook food for neighbors, and sing My Way in karaoke with a broken mic. I didn't have the money yet, or the visa, or the plan. But for the first time in years, I had something else. I had belief. "Kaya mo yan," I told myself. "Kaya ko to." It would take months, but the journey was already beginning, and I didn't realize it yet. But that journey, from snow-covered Ukraine to the warm streets of Manila, would change everything about the way I saw the world, the way I saw language, and the way I saw myself. Because sometimes, all it takes is one phrase, 3 words, and the courage to believe them. She used to think life was about strength, intelligence, and timing. The first half of her life was shaped by getting things done efficiently. Beat the deadline, get the praise, don't show weakness, don't let others carry your struggle for you. Back in Ukraine, she grew up knowing that hard work and silence were the most logical responses to hardship. Emotions had their place, but they were rarely invited into the conversation. But in the Philippines, that changed. It first happened when she was preparing for her driving test. It was a humid Tuesday, and she was already sweating through her blouse before 9 a.m. She had memorized every road rule, studied every diagram, even mimicked the tone of the test officer. But every time she imagined sitting behind the wheel, answering questions, being evaluated, she felt her chest tighten. It wasn't the driving. She was a good driver. It was the thought of being judged, of not being enough. She sat alone on a concrete bench outside the examination center, trying to breathe quietly. Her hands were trembling, and she told herself it was just the heat. That's when a Filipina stranger, maybe in her 50s, sat beside her. The woman looked tired too, and kind. She didn't bombard her with questions. She just offered her a cold bottle of water. "Para sa'yo," she said. "You look like you need this." The Ukrainian woman took the water, stunned. "Thank you," she managed. The Filipina smiled. "Kaya mo yan," there it was. That phrase again. She had first heard it weeks earlier, when she was struggling to open a pack of Pancit Canton seasoning, and someone laughed and said, "Kaya mo yan, girl." She had no idea what it meant. She thought maybe they were teasing her. The second time, she heard it when she practiced a Filipino tongue twister on TikTok and messed up every syllable. "Kaya mo yan," her neighbors shouted through the window, between laughter. The third time, a little kid told her that while she attempted to hula hoop in the barangay park, and totally failed. He didn't even know her, but he offered it with complete sincerity. "Ate, kaya mo yan." Now, for the 4th time, she heard it from a complete stranger, right when she was on the verge of crying. "Kaya mo yan," she repeated quietly, the words feeling warm in her mouth. "You can do it," the woman explained. "Everything will be okay. Just trust yourself." She stared at the Filipino woman, feeling the words land inside her, not as a cliché, but as something deeply meant, as if someone was taking her quiet fear, not judging it, not fixing it, just acknowledging it and cheering it forward. And suddenly, something inside her melted. No one in her whole life had ever said something like that to her so casually. Back home, encouragement was rare, And when it happened, it came attached to expectation. But here it was free. Here, it was everywhere. It wasn't even always serious. Filipinos said, "Kaya mo yan even to the most ridiculous struggles." Burnt cooking? Kaya mo yan, just scrape off the black parts. Trying to sing Beyonce on karaoke with zero talent? Kaya mo yan, nobody's judging you. Trying to learn how to say, nakakapagpabagabag, without breaking your jaw? Kaya mo yan slowly lang. And gradually, she realized that was the power of it. Filipinos believed in a person before the person even proved they deserved it. It wasn't false hope. It wasn't blind optimism. It was human faith, and once she let it in, it echoed everywhere. A few weeks later, she was sitting in a little sari-sari store, trying to speak Tagalog with the elderly woman behind the counter. The woman smiled warmly, nodding and repeating her words like she was talking to a toddler. "Mahal ko ang Pilipinas," she said proudly, even though she'd had to rehearse it for days. The old woman's eyes softened. "Oh, kaya mo yan," she said, patting her hand. She felt tears prick her eyes. Not because she was sad, but because it was so safe to try here, in this country where even her mistakes were treated like baby steps worth celebrating. No foreigner handbook had prepared her for this feeling, being hugged by a whole culture. She realized Kaya mo yan was not about perfection. It was about permission to try. One day, she sat beside her Filipino friend, Ria, on a jeepney ride home from the market. "What does kaya mo yan really mean to you?" she asked. Ria thought for a minute, leaning her head against the steel rail. "It means you're not alone. Like, even if everything goes wrong, even if you're scared or tired or too slow, we're still rooting for you. It's not about succeeding every time. It's about believing you have the power. And if you forget it, we'll remind you." Her voice broke. She didn't expect it to hit her that hard. It reminded her of every moment in her life she had to fight, alone. Every time she had told herself, "Don't cry, be tough, figure it out." She had survived, yes, but survival had come with loneliness. This Filipino brand of encouragement. It was like being wrapped with a soft blanket she never knew she needed. In Ukraine, she had learned strength through silence. In the Philippines, she was learning strength through love. Soon, she found herself using the phrase too, to a little kid struggling to ride a bike in the street. "Kaya mo yan." To a friend rehearsing her OFW speech for an interview. "Kaya mo yan, girl." To herself when the jeepney suddenly made a terrifying turn and she almost fell on a stranger's lap. "Kaya mo yan, balance, please balance." And then, the biggest moment arrived. She got a call from her mother. News from home, not good news. Everything in her chest tightened. Old wounds, old fears, old ways of responding to pain. But this time, something inside her didn't let her crumble. She put her hand over her heart and whispered, through tears, "Kaya mo yan." And for the first time in her life, she said it to herself, and believed it. She didn't expect it to happen slowly. She didn't expect it to happen softly. But somewhere between the laughter, the rice meals, the jeepney rides, the daily greetings of kain tayo, from neighbors she barely knew, something inside her changed permanently. The girl who once carried her stress like a shield began to relax. The woman who thought everything needed to be earned began to receive without guilt. The foreigner who used to feel like a stranger started to feel like she was home, and it all began with just 3 words. Kaya mo yan. But in this last chapter of her journey, she would understand what those words meant, not just to her, but to the whole Filipino soul. One night, sitting outside her apartment building in Makati, she watched a group of construction workers on break. They were young, tired, covered in dust. One guy looked exhausted, head resting against his cement bag like a pillow. The others laughed around him, teasing, sharing biscuits, sharing energy. Then one of them stood up and said to the tired guy, "Oh, last delivery pa. Kaya mo yan, bro." And the tired guy smiled and got up. Just like that. Not because he suddenly had more strength. Not because his body wasn't aching. But because someone believed he could keep going. It was so normal, so simple, but it hit her deep. That phrase wasn't a slogan. It wasn't a poster quote. It was a survival tool. Filipinos didn't just say kaya mo yan, they lived it, and they gave it freely, like food, laughter, and sismis. Later that month, she attended a Filipino birthday celebration in the province. The kind of big family gathering that looked like a flash mob made of cousins, titos, titas, karaoke speakers, and children who behaved like permanent fireworks. She didn't know anyone except her friend Anna. But within 30 minutes, she had eaten 3 rounds of pancit, taken 15 photos, held a baby, and been told she was so maputi, grabe, at least twice. Then it happened. They made her sing. The microphone was suddenly in her hand. The magic sing screen was glowing. Someone had already selected a song she didn't know. Everyone was looking at her. Her soul left her body. No, she whispered. I can't sing. I don't know. And that's when the oldest woman at the party, maybe the grandmother, clapped her hand and smiled with her whole face. Kaya mo yan. The room cheered. The karaoke intro started. She froze for a second. Then something bubbled up from inside her, a laugh. A full laugh. The kind that came from realizing you were safe even in embarrassment. And so, she sang Beyoncé, badly. Like, extraordinarily badly. And it didn't matter. Because halfway through, someone sang with her. Then another. Then 3 kids danced in front of her as if she were the concert. And the grandmother, yes, the grandmother, videoed the whole thing. When she finished, the room roared with applause. She cried right there, from pure joy, not because she nailed the high notes. Not because she conquered a fear, but because she had never felt so allowed to be imperfect in her entire life. Kaya mo yan? She said, into the mic, laughing and wiping her face. Everyone shouted it back, and in that moment she understood. Kaya mo yan wasn't always about pushing through hardship. Sometimes it was about being loved in your awkward, unfinished, unpolished, completely human self. Months passed, and life brought her harder tests. A visa problem, a financial setback, a personal heartbreak. Any of these might have broken her before, but this time she wasn't alone, because no Filipino ever let her feel alone. Her neighbor left fruit on her doorstep with a sticky note. Kaya mo yan. Text mo ko if you need help. Her friend sent her a voice note with laughter saying, Ate, okay lang yan. Cry for now then later. Milk tea tayo. Even strangers on Facebook, people who had only seen her vlogs, messaged her. Laban lang sis. Kaya mo yan. We're rooting for you. The words, which once sounded like cheerleading, now felt like soul medicine. She didn't just hear them anymore. She believed them, and that belief changed everything. On the day she finally solved her visa issue after months of stress, she stood outside the embassy, crying tears of relief. Her phone pinged, a message from her dad in Ukraine. Are you okay? This whole thing seems really hard. I'm worried about you. She stared at the message and her fingers trembled, but not from fear. She typed back with a smile. It was hard, but I made it. Kaya ko pala. She stopped when she realized what she'd written. Not kaya mo yan, but kaya ko yan. I can do it. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just repeating something she'd heard. She was living it. Why do Filipinos say it so much? She once asked her Filipino friend, who was stirring adobo in a pot. Because sometimes, the friend said, you don't need solutions. You just need someone to believe in you. That line stayed in her heart forever. And slowly, Filipino culture rewired her. She started saying kaya mo yan, in Ukrainian, to people back home. Vtebet sa vida. She encouraged her mom through a stressful hospital checkup. She cheered for her younger cousin, who was afraid of moving abroad. She even said it to herself in the mirror. On bad days, tired days, alone days. The phrase crossed oceans. Filipinos had given her more than comfort. They had given her courage with kindness. Years later, long after she left the Philippines, she still carried those 3 words. She used them in classrooms when she became a language teacher. She used them in messages to her TikTok viewers. She whispered them every time she started over, Kaya mo yan. And then, one day, During a family gathering, her little niece cried because she couldn't solve her homework. She knelt beside her and said, gently and with a smile, "Kaya mo yan, sweetheart." Her niece sniffled. "What does that mean?" She took a breath and felt the Philippines inside her rise. "It means, you're not alone, and you're stronger than you think." The girl nodded and kept writing. As she walked away, her heart swelled. She had become the voice she once needed. She had become the person who believed in others, the way Filipinos had believed in her. And that's when she understood. Kaya mo yan wasn't just a phrase, it was a gift, a cultural treasure. A soft push, a quiet love, and she would carry it her whole life, across languages, across borders, across generations, because sometimes all someone needs to keep going is knowing somebody thinks they can. And that was the day she realized Filipinos hadn't just changed her vocabulary, they had changed her heart.